Welcome to the Uncle's Channel. Thanks for watching today. And let's talk about my top 5 favorite retro games for 2023. Now, these are not games that came out in this particular year. These are games that came out like maybe 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 years ago. I just simply discovered either for the first time or I rediscovered my love for the game and enjoyed my particular playthrough during this year. Now, I played a lot of retro games for this particular year because I've been going through a Game Boy challenge where I've been trying to complete every single Game Boy game that's ever been made. And so I went through like over 50 Game Boy games, and some of those are of course going to make the list here, but not every game on this list is going to be a Game Boy game. So if you think the channel is dedicated mostly to Game Boy, I do have a few surprises here as we go. And if you want to see my list of like my top 5 favorite games that were released this year, you can click the link that's listed up above and you can see my top 5 favorite games from 2023. But let's go ahead and get into the top 5 retro games from 2023. Now, in 5th place is going to be Super Mario Advance or Super Mario Bros. 2, and I absolutely adore Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES. It's one of my all-time favorite games ever, not just simply on the NES, like favorite games of all time. I adore this game in pretty much every way. The music, the graphics, the gameplay. I have so many fond memories of Super Mario Bros. 2, and I just simply never played Super Mario Advance. I remember when it very first came out, I got a Game Boy Advance, but I didn't pick up this particular game just simply because I was like, I have the NES version. Why do I need to spend $30 to get the Game Boy Advance version? But when it finally came to the Switch Online this year, I gave it a full playthrough. And I can't say I like it better than the original NES version, but I really did have a fantastic time going through it. The updated graphics had their own little charm to it. The new gameplay mechanics, pulling out the giant vegetables from the ground. I mean, they didn't really add like any new levels or anything like that, but there were, a few little collectibles as you go. But it was just really fun to journey through a very familiar land with a little bit of a different coat of paint on it. And as far as like which version is the best, the NES one's my all-time favorite, then this particular one, and then the one from Super Mario Bros. All-Stars on the SNES. I didn't really particularly like that one a whole lot. I actually didn't like the graphics as much as the NES one, where this one really felt like it was a true remake of the game. And so my order would be NES, Game Boy Advance, SNES as far as the version of Super Mario Bros. 2, but I truly did enjoy my time going for Super Mario Advance and just journeying through a world that I already loved and getting to see what all the hype was back from the early 2000s. Now in 4th place is going to be Dr. Mario 64, and I have had Dr. Mario 64 for many years. I have it on the actual N64, I have it on the Switch Online, and I've been a big Dr. Mario fan since the NES. I still remember we got the NES Dr. Mario when I was like maybe 5, 6 years old. I was really young, and my family has played it for many, many years, and it will always be probably my favorite puzzle game that's ever been created. And of course, I've gone through Dr. Mario 64 many, many times. However, this particular year, around September, I actually played through Wario Land 3 for the first time on the Game Boy Color. And when I did that, it finally dawned on me. All the characters inside Dr. Mario 64 are ripped directly out of Wario Land. And I always thought these characters were just completely original for Dr. Mario 64. I had no idea they had a background story or a background to them in any form or fashion. And so like actually playing through the game again with a little bit different light, as far as like looking at it through like a Wario Land lens a little bit, I don't know, it just sort of renewed my interest in this particular entry of the franchise. And it was fun just simply to play through the story mode again and just sort of relive some of the memories of Dr. Mario 64. I will say this is probably the best version of Dr. Mario and just in general, but seeing it with the Wario Land emphasis just made it like all that much better to me. And so I feel like Dr. Mario 64 well deserves its place as 4th on this list. Now in 3rd place is going to be a game called Garo Quest for the Game Boy, and I had always played Garo Quest 2 on the NES, I had played Demon's Crest on the SNES, but I had never played the first one in the entire series here, which was just simply Garo Quest. It was part of my Game Boy challenge I was going through. Retro Edge UK suggested it to me. I knew I was going to like it before I even loaded it up, but I had no idea I was going to like it as much as I did. Pretty much any game is like a mixture of an RPG and a side-scroll adventure I'm going to find some enjoyment with, and this particular game follows the story of Firebrand from the Ghost and Goblin series as he's trying to rescue or save the ghoul realm from being overtaken. And of course you journey in an overhead view here on your like sort of map screen from city to city, and you can be attacked on that and sort of sucked into like Legend of Zelda or Adventure of Link type battles on that. And then you journey into like actual castles and you have the full side scroll. It's actually pretty similar to the Adventures of Link now that I sort of think about it, but you upgrade your character as you go along. Of course you get different like flying powers, you get different attack powers. and all the enemies are like very creative throughout. The bosses are really creative. I mean, the game itself is just a really fantastic experience, and that's not to mention the soundtrack. The soundtrack for it was pretty much perfection for a soundtrack of this type of game. Had haunting melodies behind it, and just really fit the atmosphere very well as you're going. But overall, Garo Quest, I'm so glad I finally got a chance to play the first entry in the series. And if you haven't played it yet, this is definitely the time to load it up. It's on the Switch Online, and you can go through it on your own and experience what this game is all about. Now in second place is going to be Final Fantasy Adventure for the original Game Boy, and this particular game here is not actually a Final Fantasy game at all. It's actually the very first game in the Secret of Mana series, so the gameplay is very much more akin to like Link's Awakening than a traditional Final Fantasy game. And as you're going through it, like, of course the combat feels a little bit off at first, but you're going to get more and more used to it as you go. But like the storyline for it, excellent story. I mean, it's a very emotional story, especially at the very, very end. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it was like one of the best endings of a Game Boy game like I've ever seen. And the soundtrack throughout it is also top notch. I mean, Square Enix, or Squaresoft at the time, really knew how to do a fantastic soundtrack from the moment you load the game up throughout the entire journey all the way to the end. Excellent, excellent soundtrack. But also like the different characters you get to meet as you're going along, the different enemies you're going to battle. Like they jam-packed so many unique bosses into the game. Like you didn't go more than like maybe 30-40 minutes before encountering a new boss. And in some cases like sort of back-to-back bosses. And they were all like very unique design. And so like everything about this particular game was just absolutely fantastic. And if you haven't played this one, if you love Secret of Mana on SNES, you're definitely going to love the game. If you love the overhead Zelda games, you're also definitely going to love this game. If you love the storytelling or the lore of like Final Fantasy, things like that, I also think this game is going to be down your alley. And so Final Fantasy Adventure, it's not going to be number 1, but it was very, very close and comes in at number 2 of my top 5 retro games of 2023. And now we're at number 1. The number 1 retro game for me this year is going to be Pokemon, the trading card game for the Game Boy Color. And this is a game that I had played a little bit years ago, back when I was like in middle school. And I enjoyed the game, but I never got to actually finish it. And so when I was doing the Game Boy Challenge this year, my friend Jordan suggested this particular game. And I was like, you know what? It's time to finally go through, finish the game, especially with like such high praise that he was giving it. And like, holy cow, this game like blew me away. Like the strategy involved in it, like there's some really legitimate like strategy involved in the trading card game. And they really brought the trading card game like into full focus for the Game Boy Color. Like the cards are all like super well done, super easy to play. The graphics for it are absolutely like mind-blowing for the Game Boy as far as like capturing what the actual trading cards looked like. But it also just simply captured the fun of the trading card game. And I never like really played the trading card game like a whole lot. I was more like a Magic the Gathering player growing up. But like they really captured like what it was like playing a trading card game on the Game Boy, and they have like a full adventure mode to go along with that. And this is just a really, really fun game to go through. I have a full review of it on the channel here, like the full playthrough. But even like when I finished the game, when they released it on the Switch Online, I ended up starting the game again, going through it that way, so I could actually like, you know, battle online and such as that. And so I know there's a trading card game part 2 out there. I do need to go through that at some point, probably sooner than later. But Pokemon trading card game, if you like Pokemon, you like card games, you'll adore the game. It's on the Switch Online. There's no reason not to load it up. Give it a go. Actually, every one of these games, except for one, is on the Switch Online service, and that's going to be Final Fantasy Adventure. So 4 of my 5 games you could play in 2023 with very, very ease on modern hardware if you wanted to. But those are my top 5 favorite retro games of 2023. What are your top 5 favorite retro games of this year? Let me know in the comments down below. Which games pulled you in more than the rest? Which games did you rediscover after many years of forgetting about? Which games are your favorite for this year? Let me know down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check my other videos listed up above and go out there and find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.